Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In this video, we are talking about one of the few teams that I actually didn't talk about at all during or following the draft, and this is a team that I actually really like what they did in the draft. So I'm excited to talk about them, and they also just signed D'Anthony Melton to a new contract. So overall, I really like what the Grizzlies are doing, and I'm excited to talk about them. However, before I get too far into it, I want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. It helps you out because you get all of my great basketball content right there in your sub box, and it helps me out because I really appreciate the support. Without further ado, let's talk about the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll start by talking about the draft. They started off the draft with the 40th pick, and that's it. They used that 40th pick as well as a future second round pick in order to move up to the 35th pick, where they selected Xavier Tillman, a big man from Michigan State. I wasn't as high on Tillman as many people were, but I still think that this was a really nice pick for the Grizzlies. I think that at some point he's going to be a really nice complementary player to Jaren Jackson and one of the more optimal players to start around Jackson in the entire NBA, or at least the player archetype that Xavier Tillman has. He's a really nice rebounder. He's great at positioning himself to grab boards, and that's really one of the places where Jaren struggles. Despite his athleticism and size and length, he struggles to grab rebounds, and Tillman is great at positioning himself in order to grab boards. Tillman can also play on the perimeter a little bit and guard perimeter players, which will help to allow Jaren Jackson Jr. to stay in the paint and be the excellent rim protector that he is. If he can improve his fouling tendency and go straight up a bit more often and make better decisions about when to really chase after shot blocks, Jaren Jackson Jr. has a chance to be a really, really good NBA player. And I think that Tillman could be an excellent complement for him, especially on the defensive end, but also on the offensive end. Tillman is a really good screen setter. He's really nice at passing out of the short roll and also out of the post. And he's more of an inside player, whereas Jaren Jackson is more of a perimeter type guy who is more likely to step out and shoot a three as a stretch four. So I think that they complement each other very, very well on both ends of the floor and are the front court of the future for this team. Plus, you have the added benefit that the two were college teammates at Michigan State. So overall, I really like this pick for the Grizzlies. However, it's not even my favorite pick that they made in the draft, because getting Desmond Bane with the 30th pick by giving up two future second round picks was a very, very good deal. I think Desmond Bane is going to develop into a really solid rotational wing player due to his excellent shooting stroke. He's one of the better shooters off of movement in this entire draft, and that's super valuable at the NBA level because it allows you to create shots for yourself without even having to take a dribble. If you can move well off the ball, run around screens in the right way, and get yourself open for jump shots, that's super advantageous to your team. And Desmond Bane is one of the better players at doing that. We saw him do it a ton this past season at TCU, and I would look for that to continue. He also works really hard on the defensive end, is a very smart defensive player, makes all the right rotations. He's not much of a defensive playmaker because he has a very short wingspan, only about 6 feet 5 inches, I'm pretty sure. So that is a bit of a disadvantage for him, but we've seen the Grizzlies have great success with another two guard with a short wingspan in Dylan Brooks. So I think that there's lots of potential that they could do the same thing with Desmond Bane. I really like Bane, and I think that he profiles as a 3-and-D wing moving forward into the future that can play at a high level in the NBA for a long time. And I also like the Tillman pick as a really nice complement to Jaren Jackson Jr. inside. Outside of that, we get into the actual free agency move that the Grizzlies made, and that was re-signing D'Anthony Melton to a 4-year, $36 million deal. And this was one of the better deals made in free agency so far. I had D'Anthony Melton number 1 on my top 7 most underrated free agents, heading into this upcoming free agency. I think that he was probably worth something between $12 and $14 million on the open market this free agency period. And the Grizzlies just signed him for $9 million on a 4-year deal. Obviously, this does add to their complicated backcourt rotation. At this point, they really have 5 or 6 players that you could consider rotation level guys in the backcourt, with Ja Morant, Tyus Jones at the point guard position, D'Anthony Melton as a combo guard, and Dillon Brooks, Desmond Bane, and Grayson Allen at the 2 guard. Obviously, Bane and Brooks can also probably play the 3 a little bit, but really it's talent. The Grizzlies are still in the midst of a rebuild. They don't know which players are long-term pieces. Melton is on a fantastic contract that if they decide that Dillon Brooks and Desmond Bane are the 2 guards that they want to move forward with for the future, would have a lot of value and would be very easily moved. I guess I should probably talk about D'Anthony Melton and why I like him so much. I think he's a fantastic defensive player. He can guard 1 through 3 pretty much despite having short arms, or despite being short because he has long arms, a great wingspan. He works really hard on defense, is a very smart player, creates a lot of deflections, and he's super valuable on that end of the floor. He's also a great rebounder. He rebounds like he's 6'7", not like he's 6'2". That's another aspect of the game where he's very blessed with a great feel for the game. He's a decent playmaker and a decent ball handler on offense, and I think that gives him the potential to become a secondary playmaker. He's not a lead guard type guy, and the Grizzlies don't need that because they have Ja Morant, who profiles to become an all-NBA level player at some point. But I do think that D'Anthony Melton can be an excellent complement because of his defensive exploits as well as some offensive potential as a slasher. If he can develop his three-point shot and get it from, I think he's a 29% three-point shooter for his career at this point. If he can get that much closer to the mid-30s, then I think D'Anthony Melton becomes an above-average starter in the NBA. This is an excellent deal, very great value here for D'Anthony Melton, and I think that it just makes the Grizzlies that much deeper and that much more interesting moving forward. Like I said, they're very deep. This team has a lot of players that are very interesting to me, and at this point, they have 14 guys under contract. Now, obviously, if they are looking to re-sign an extra player... Sorry, I just got distracted a little bit there, but getting back to the depth that this team has at the point guard, you have Ja Morant, who is going to be a really, really solid building block for this team, and he's probably the focal point of their rebuild. You have Tyus Jones, who's a spectacular option as a backup point guard, really good playmaker and ball handler for his team, and does a great job of running the offense with the second group. Once again, D'Anthony Melton as that combo guard type. Dillon Brooks and Desmond Bane are similar players, but they're also both pretty good, and if you need to move on from one of them, I'm sure it's possible. Grayson Allen fights on defense, and as his shooting stroke continues to develop, has a chance to be an NBA-level player. Justice Winslow is a guy that they gave up a lot to get, and giving up Iguodala and Crowder and Solomon Hill, who ended up being key pieces on the Miami Heat team that made it to the Eastern Conference Finals this past season. Kyle Anderson is a decent role player, spaces the floor, plays solid defense. Jaren Jackson Jr. is the other big building block for this team alongside Ja Morant as a big man who can play the stretch four and use his length on the defensive end of the floor to be super impactful. Brandon Clark was one of the bigger surprises and one of the bigger steals of this past season as a rookie who broke out and played spectacularly. He can score the ball at a high level. He's a good rebounder, and he plays good defense. The fact that he fell all the way to 21, I believe it was, where the Grizzlies snatched him up in the 2019 NBA draft, was a great value pick, and it's looking like he has a chance to be a top 5 player from that draft class. Really, I think the Grizzlies have nailed back-to-back drafts. 2 years ago, they signed Ja and Brandon Clark. Last year they signed drafted Ja and Brandon Clark. Even you can go back to the Jaren Jackson class. Wasn't Dillon Brooks in that class? So they got Jaren Jackson and Dillon Brooks. Then Brandon Clark and Ja Morant. Now I think Desmond Bane and Xavier Tillman is excellent value for where they got those 2 guys. So this team has been one of the better drafting teams in recent years. They have got this rebuild looking spectacular. They have lots of great long-term pieces that are very exciting. And I think that they have a chance to be a real impact team in the East within the next 5 seasons. You do have some veterans on this team like Jonas Valanciunas that you could look to move on from at some point. I think Valanciunas would have some value on the trade market for a team that needs a center. You can look at what the New Orleans Pelicans just got in exchange, or excuse me, the Oklahoma City Thunder just got in exchange for Steven Adams from the New Orleans Pelicans. I view Jonas Valanciunas as a player on a similar level to Adams. He's not quite the defensive player that Adams is, but he's better on the offensive end of the floor, and that makes him a good, valuable starting center, and I think that they could probably get a future first if they were interested in moving on from him. However, they did just sign him to a contract extension, and I don't see any reason why they would. So they are really just set up with pieces for the future. They have some win now pieces that can allow them to contend for the playoffs, at least get close to it, play meaningful games leading into the latter part of the season that can really prepare this core to make deep playoff runs someday. I love what the Grizzlies are doing. I think keeping DeAnthony Melton was a great move, and I'm very excited for this team's future. Let me know in the comments section below what you think. I love this DeAnthony Melton signing, but maybe some other people have a different view on it than me. Let me know. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I think that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you all again very soon.